G'day folks, welcome to this week's episode of Learn to Paint TV. Rod Moore from the Learn to Paint Academy with you again. Now this week's episode I thought we'd do a little landscape from an area I've just been to for the last 3 days, which was around Bow Desert and Mount Tambourine, around that area there. So this is a little sketch. It is pretty rough, but that's all we need is a little composition to get us started. So we've got that main group of trees in the foreground. Going to have a lot of field there with the path leading out to the distance, and that's going to be all dry, burn off grasses. So we'll use a lot of earthy tones and colours. So as always, going to use the Moore method of painting. Step 1 is all about getting our drawing of our big shapes in. So let us get underway with getting our drawing in. Okay, so I've got a 9 by 11 inch canvas panel on the board here. Great for doing little studies and demos. Now, to get our drawing in, we always start off with just mixing up a nice dark, so a little bit of our main blue and red there. Keep that paint quite loose, so I'll get plenty of water into that. Because it's a drawing, you know, we're just getting those big shapes in. So our big shapes, first of all, we've got our horizon line, which the horizon line is going to sit roughly just below that halfway mark. It's going to be somewhere like that through there, okay? And then we'll pick out that point so that we can then get our main mountain range, which is Mount Tambourine. It sort of runs down like that, and then we've got a distant mountain. Now, actually, that's just too big. So I've started that off and I'm going, nah, that's just not going to work the way I want it to. So I'll take some paper towel and some water. Let me just wipe that out a little bit. Might be able to wipe it off completely, but just so I know. Okay. I don't want the mountains to really dominate in this painting, and that was just going to be too big. So let me start again. So this mountain range is going to be more like that, and then we're going to have a little one out there. Okay. So don't be put off by the other lines. You know, if you make a mistake, it's better to correct it rather than persist with a composition that's just simply not going to work. Now our tree line, I want to sit our tree line on around about there. And part of the reason why I knew that that was too big was because I was going to put this row of trees into here, okay? So I want them to be able to run up above the line of that mountain. If I'd gone with the original one, it wouldn't have quite done that. I've got another little row of trees there, okay? A few things happening in there. And then the final thing is, so we're just getting big shapes in. So I've got these shapes of these big trees, got the 2 mountains. Final thing I want to do is have this sort of like path that sort of meanders through there, and it just disappears into the distance there is what we're going to aim for. And then we might have another group of trees. So let's move on with step number 2. And in step number 2, our job here is to find our big shapes and block them with the right color, the right value, and saturation and so on. And the important thing here is that what we're painting here really is the shadow side of these big objects in the blocking phase. All right, so let's move on and do that now. So because we're blocking in, I'll go to my big brush. Okay, and so we'll mix up a dark, and we want our darkest dark for that tree range. That's going to be our real sort of center of interest there, those trees. So I'll start with my ultramarine blue, okay? And then I'll add in our permanent alizarin crimson. Now, I could add a little bit of this cadmium red and get our darkest dark, okay? That'll just darken it up even more, okay? And I'm going to add in some of the yellow ochre. Why am I doing that? Because by adding that 3rd primary in, we'll get it closer to a black rather than a dark purple, okay? So let me just get a little bit more blue in there. That's going to be pretty dark when I put that up there. Get a little bit of water, okay? And again, want this paint to be loose. I'm using water mixable oils here, and if this paint isn't thin and loose, then it's going to be difficult to come back in and paint over it later on, okay? So just get the outline of that tree. I'm going to create a couple of little clusters of trees in there. And we'll put sky holes and things in there later on. That's no problem. Okay, we'll put in a couple of trunks, just roughly there. Okay. You know, we'll start off with blue. We'll pick up some of that and we'll pull it into the blue. That'll help grey the blue, but we really need to get that white in there. So let's get a slice of our white here. I'll use the palette knife and we'll just pop that in there like so. Let's mix that together and see what we end up with. Now that's too light. Hope you can see that. That's going to be too light because that's getting close to our lightest point of our sky. So let's blue it up a bit more. We do want these to sit in the background though, these mountains. Okay, so just a bit more blue, tiny little bit of the red. Okay, we don't want them to be happy blue. Okay, maybe a touch more. We can always adjust this in step 3 of the more method of painting. But the closer we can get it, you know, in accuracy to colour, value, saturation and so on, the better it'll be as a starting point. So let's just pop that in. And when we start to compare it now, because it's difficult when you're mixing paint to really know if you've got it right. But when you put it up on the board against that dark, is that going to create a sense of depth? And I think the answer is, you know, pretty much yes there. It's probably a little bit too happy blue, but we'll put just a little touch of highlight onto it later on to... it means we're going to have to get our sky quite light in value. So now I want to put this second mountain behind this one. So in order to do that, I need to just lighten it off again with a touch more white. Okay. And this second mountain, I don't mind if it sort of starts to disappear back into the sky when we put the sky up there. That'd actually be a nice effect. Now you can see on the palette, this, what I've just mixed here is lighter than what we just used there. Okay, so that's how you do a check. So let's just pop that up. Keep the edges of this one quite loose. Okay, we've got a little row of trees there, so I'll dab in some slightly darker paint for that. We'll keep the sky fairly pure colour, just the blue and white, because I want to try and create the effect of a, you know, baking hot day, and you know, just a little puffy cloud promising some rain but not delivering. Okay, so there's a good amount of that paint there. Got a little touch of water. I'm going to keep this paint now. We want to start getting this a little bit thicker. This paint. It's probably too dark. Let me get some more white. Because I don't want to have to come back in and work over my sky. Okay. I just want to get it in one hit. And I want to keep the sky, you can see it's a little bit dark, so I will come in with some white over that. But I want to keep the brush marks, don't make them, you know, sort of come across the canvas in a nice and neat like that. Whoop. See, there's a fair bit of water in there, that's okay. Yeah, vary up your brush marks in there, I think is a good practice. Okay, let's get some thicker white paint in there because I obviously had too much water in the brush. There we go. So now I can come back in with this thicker paint. If it's thicker than the dark that we put in before, then I can just reshape the tree if I need to, right? Make some interesting shapes. Don't make it just all like a round ball there. Okay. Very easy just to push in and change up some of the edges there. Okay. Same thing with these mountains. I've got like a hard edge there at the moment. Don't really want a hard edge, so I'll just pull it away like so. And just soften it out. Okay. So see, I've got nice strong brush marks up in the sky there. Now again, if I don't nail the right value and tone during this blocking, that's okay. This is why I want to keep our paint thin. We can adjust later on. And in fact, you know, I spend a lot of time adjusting tones and values. Better to get it as accurate as we can when we're starting out here, but no guarantees about that, right? Keep that line out the back there a little blurred. Might just get a little touch lighter actually. Notice I've got my darker tone there, the middle, and then a lighter tone here. And I'll just pick up a little touch of that and just work that into that far distant part there. Because if you know the aerials of the principles of aerial perspective, you'll know that lighter tones recede and darker values come forward. So therefore, when we paint our field, to stop it looking flat, you know how some paintings you see the landscape just looks very flat and dull? To stop it doing that, what we do is we paint not sure what that is. We paint our lights out in the distance, and then as we come closer into the foreground, we will start to darken up. Okay, work around that path. Paint over the edge, don't colour in. Okay, let's get a little touch darker in there now. Now the other principle of aerial perspective, of course, is that warmer colours come forward. Oh, watch what I do here. Like I've over painted the shadow, so I'm going to bring the brush up over that shadow now. Okay, and it's going to get a little bit dirty here and there, but that's okay. But what I'll do is I'll just start establishing some flicks of grass along that line. Beautiful. Okay, and the paint's got a little bit thin there, so it's picked up some of that dark there, which I don't mind. It's going to add some more interesting textures in there. So I'll get a little bit more yellow ochre, a little bit of permanent alizarin crimson in there now. And let's just start to warm up this foreground here. Sorry about my boards moving a bit there. Yeah, by warming it up, that'll create more depth into the painting as well, because warmer colours come forward, cooler colours are going to recede. Okay, break up that line. Don't colour it in, Rod. There we go. So you can see that field now has a feeling of it receding back into the distance there. Okay. All right. Well, friends, that sort of brings us to the end of step number 2, which is our blocking step. And as you can see, we're going along quite nicely here with this painting. We've got a good sense of depth. We've got some nice earthy tones in the field, and then we've got our cooler tones in the back. And these trees are well shaped and they're looking good, and they're going to put us in a good position to really make that the focus there, but then also to have this mystery of some depth in the background there. We might even put a little farmhouse or something in there towards the end. It's going good. So hope you followed me up to this point. What I normally do here, if you're using acrylics, this is really important, stop at this point, right? Let it dry off completely, then we'll come back in and we'll do step 3 after that. If you're using water mixable oils or traditional oils, I always like to stop at this point for an hour or so and just let it tack off a bit, you know, let it dry off a little bit. The paint gets sticky, which is different from the acrylics, right? When acrylics go sticky, they're difficult to work back into. But when oil paint goes a little bit sticky, it makes it much easier to work back into, and it's a good time then to put your mid-tones and highlights over. So we'll take a little break, and I'll see you right after the break for step 3. Cheers. Okay, welcome back, folks. Let this go for about 45 minutes to an hour, and it's going along quite nicely. I think this will come together and be a nice little landscape painting designed for the beginner in mind. There's not a lot more for us to do, really. I'm going to put some detail work into this tree, a little touch in here, a little bit in the field and the path, but that's about it, right? Maybe we'll put a little fluffy cloud in the sky, but I want to keep it really simple so that anybody can have a go at this, right? This is a beginner project, but even if you're a bit more advanced, you can then expand on this and add more details in if you want to. But I'm going to keep it really simple for those of you who are just starting out, and you can see how simple it can be to do a great landscape. Let us get underway with step 3. Okay, so we're going to put most of our focus into the tree here. And for that, we're going to need a little bit of green, but it's going to be more of a burnt sort of leaf color. So let's get a little touch of green. Start off with our blue. We'll get some of this yellow ochre. Okay. And this is, I'm doing Australian scene here. So if you're not in Australia, you can modify the tree and the scene to suit maybe more of your local area. So I'll put my blue and my yellow ochre to there. I'll get a little pinhead of the alizarin crimson. That'll just grey it back a bit so it's not too saturated. Okay. And we'll get just a tiny little bit of white in there. Not that much. Okay, just a tiny little bit. Mix that around. There we go. It's starting to get a middle value green for this type of tree. And I'll scrape it up. Actually, let me show you that again. What I'll do first is I'll pull the paint off the knife, right? And I might just switch knives actually. We'll go to this one here. Okay. Stock standard palette knife, but what I'll do is I'll just cut it so I've got a little ribbon of paint on there. That way I can control the paint a little bit easier. And we come into the subject here, and I'll just start moving that around. We'll have a bit of a light source coming in from that side, so we'll keep that in mind. Okay. Pop that in there. Now I don't want to lose all that dark that we put in there already, so I can scrape some of it back if I need to. But that gives us a good start. Now we'll mix up a slightly different tone here now. Get the red in there. Okay. And this is going to be more of our edges, our highlights and so on. So I'm using my booster colour there, that yellow, cadmium yellow light. Okay. Load that paint up, and then let's just come up here and, oh, that's quite strong, isn't it? But if I start to merge it in with that green, I think it'll create a nice effect. Just get those edges soft, push up some into the sky there. Because we're using a limited palette, that sky color will merge with these colors because it's all from the same family of colors, right? Okay, a bit more of that green. We'll come in here into the more the shadow side here. So we're just playing around with the knife. You could use a brush if you prefer. I like to mix it up and try new things. Okay. I'll put some of that warmer tone now into that green. And let's just have a little bit of a go at this secondary tree here. So, you know, step 3 of the Moore method of painting, it's all about slowing down and just getting the details in, finishing off the painting. Let's connect those two trees by just merging their foliage together. Yeah, it's the time where we start to bring the painting to life here. Try a slightly different approach to doing some tree trunks here. Some of it's going to be in, see I've just cut the ribbon there of paint. Some of it's going to be here in highlight. So we'll just create a nice strong highlight tone there. Okay, so in fact what I'll do is I'll use a brush to get in our path here. Now path wants to be a different tone from the field, more of an earthy sort of tone. So we'll go a bit redder. Don't want it to be pink though, but we'll use that as a starting base, and I'll use lots of paint here. Look at that. See that amount of paint I got on there? And let's just start. See, that's a different tone there to what we've got in the field, but it's still complementary to what we've got in the field. Why? Because it's a limited palette, and I'm using a few tones, a few colours. Okay. Went outside my line there, but that's okay. I'll just use my finger brush. Now we'll just darken that a little bit, get a little bit of blue into that. Actually, let's just grade it more than anything, but we'll just get some of that in there as well. See how easy it is to pull a painting together when you have a little process that you're working with? And that's the beauty of the Moore method of painting, you know, is that we give you an approach that you can follow, and if you follow it and you're diligent about how you follow it, then you can end up with nice little paintings, right? Even if you've got very little experience currently. All right. Now, if you wanted to, if I was doing this as a bigger painting, I'd probably put a little bit of highlight on the distant mountains, but we're not doing a bigger painting, it's only a small one, so I'll leave that be. What I will do though is get some of this clean white here, pop it there, and mix it slightly into the blue, but not too much, okay? And then I'll scoop some of that up. So I've got a little puddle of that on the brush, and I think we just need a little bit of a cloud here to balance against that shape there. So let us just work that in. Now the paint in my sky's just dried off a little, so I will need to put a little bit of paint around it. So get that sky tone, and just got to reshape this cloud a little and soften it in. We don't want it to be too strong there, do we? So if it's jumping forward too much, it'll lose its it'll dominate the eye too much, and then the purpose of the cloud will start to get lost. So I'll just work back into it a little bit. So what I'll try to get is just the feel of some fluffy clouds there without actually painting, you know, the details of clouds. You can if you want. I prefer to leave them just slightly understated rather than, unless you're doing a painting about clouds. You know, if the painting's specifically about clouds, then you'd have the horizon line a lot lower, and you'd have a bigger sky, and you could then really work up the details in the clouds. I'll come down to a little rigger brush, a little small one like this, and I won't do a lot of work with the rigger brush, but I'll just get some of that dark, and I just feel that we could just strengthen up. Unfortunately, my palette knife skills weren't as good as I'd like to be able to just work in. I mean, I could if I really persisted, of course, but for the sake of time here today, I'll just pop in a few little bits like so. of old broken down logs and things off the tree there. And you know, what else would you do to it? Oh, maybe a little bit of work in the grass. So let's get some, we'll take some of that tone from the trunk of the tree, and let's just use some of that to put in a few bits of dried up grasses there. Now you wouldn't do this in the background there so much. Get a little bit of the darker yellow ochre as well. Just creating a few marks there to give the impression of foreground grasses. If you're going to go back and do it in the background, then you would obviously lighten off the tone. That's too light. Still got to be able to see it against the field colour that's already there. But you would do it more sparingly, I guess. Be the best way to think about it. Well, there you go, folks. Our little setting there in the drought sort of sunburnt country feel that we were trying to get. I think it's come up well. You know, it's a very high key painting, which means it's light values rather than all dark values. Our darkest element, of course, is this cluster of trees here. The next one is the distant Mount Tambourine. Everything else is fairly light and high key, and so it makes it have a feel of a warm day, and you know, the burn off field gives it the feel of a bit of a drought or dry conditions. So not a bad little painting for one we just made up, right, from a memory. And I'd encourage you to think about when you're driving around or out and about looking at different subjects, that you make a little sketch, and then you can utilize that as a way of doing little practice paintings like this, and that'll improve your painting. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Learn to Paint TV. You can check out all the past episodes at learntopaint.tv. I'll pop the address underneath me here. And if you haven't done so already, go and register for our free course, which is at the Learn to Paint Academy. And again, web address will be underneath me here or in the description. So go and do that. We'll give you a free course where we go into the more method of painting in more detail. And there's 4 different painting demos for you to have a go at. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed this one. I've enjoyed doing this one. It's been a bit of fun. And I'd love to see your results. So happy painting, and cheers for now. See you next time.